Hey, everybody, welcome back to Conversations in Ken's Cafe. Our special guest today is Cass Gilmore. He's a cranberry grower out in the east coast of the U.S., a long-term guy. You've been on our on with Leighton Morrison several times. So, guys, for an introduction, we can go and you can look up Cass on the website and get more of an introduction. But right now, I want to just jump straight in because you've had a very interesting journey. You started out as a normal grower and you've moved into, and your understanding is growing, week by week. So can you tell us, where you started at with your cranberry grow and then how you've taken the steps to become where you are today?
Yeah, sure. So our farm is third generation cranberry grower. So it's historically very conventional, very, you know, very reactive. So you see an insect, then you react to it. Same thing with the fertilizers. We're all, salt based. And to be honest, I didn't know any better. It's what the farm was when I got into it. So just kind of continued that. Fortunately, my father, he only applied fertilizer one time of the year. So it was not like it was like I knew there had to be more to it than just one fertilizer application to the plant. So that was kind of that sparked my curiosity. Is there's got to be more to it than just one time in June? So unfortunately, over the years, I got involved with Lead New York, which is a agriculture leadership program that runs through Cornell Extension. So in the United States and Canada actually has one because we met the Canadians on our foreign trip. And the idea is with that, it's a 2-year program. You see a lot of different farms. They work on leadership skills like public speaking, whatnot. So that kind of was the beginning of opening my eyes. And throughout before I had kids, I used to travel a lot, international travels. So the Lead New York, our international trip was to the Philippines and to Vietnam. So it was neat to see agriculture in Asia. It's very, we think, US and Canada we're the only ones that can grow food, but it's neat. You go over there, like their farms, they're like 1 to 2 hectares, so like 2 to 5 acres, and they just multi-crop everything. They'll do like a little patch of lettuce, and then in between it'll be like almost like a raised bed, and then it'll be like a gully underneath, and they'll have fish right next to it, and they use the water from the fish to feed the plants. And it was, like I said, it was very neat to see. And they're all family farms, so like I said, there were small family farms, and the fact that it was, millions of farmers. So it was like to take that in, and it was kind of sad because at the same time they were getting we were so used to the chemical involvement in America that they were starting to get some of that where they could get fertilizers that we weren't allowed to use, and so they were kind of, I don't know if drifting or maybe it's similar where you have a salesman show up and you try a little. So,
Yeah.
So yes, Vietnam, the Philippines, and then the wife and I, we went to Thailand for our honeymoon. We stayed way up in the mountains on this. It was like an ag tour. The kid was just starting this. His family had done rice paddies for probably forever. So really far up into the mountains. And he was he was trying to rebuild like a staycation. So a lot of it was like for people in Bangkok and like local tourism or domestic tourism. But he recreated traditional Thai huts, and you're out in the middle of nowhere. Very beautiful, no light pollution, so it was very unique. And they served us dinner, so he was giving us the tour and everything, and then we see the his mother I'm moving the chicken down the road or whatever kind of thing, and he was like, "Oh yeah, that's what you're having for dinner." It's just how life is. In Asia, everything's it's live markets. So you don't buy processed meats, you buy the animal live and then you process it yourself. So it's just how it is over there.
You can't get much fresher than that, that's for sure.
No, and food safety's on you, really, at the end of the day. So, but so it was seeing different farming over in Asia, and then in 2019 we went to Colombia. This is right before COVID. So we stayed on the Caribbean side, and then we ended up in out. It was, gosh, I'm trying to think. It was we flew to Medellin, and then it was a 6-hour drive into the mountains. It was a really remote place. It was a neat eco hostel, small little town, and there was a local coffee plantation there. So every time we traveled, we'd always try to do a farm tour just to see how others do it. So I remember talking to this guy, and we were going around his coffee farm, and he was saying that they had recently converted to organic. And I asked him, because like I said, we were still conventional, and we were always told you can never go organic. It's just not
feasible.
Not feasible. So, anyways, we were going through his coffee farm, his coffee plantation. We were seeing the beautiful trees and everything, and it was interesting because they would trim the trees and just leave the debris right at the base of the tree. I'm like, what are you doing? Aren't you gonna contaminate it with bad pathogens from your tree? And we're in our farming practice, we're so used to having to sterilize any cranberry chaff or anything like that is, the theory is that, that it's holding the pathogens or pests or weed seeds. So he's like, no, it's good. And I was like, all right, well, whatever, just taking it all in, and going out through the whole thing. And then right at the end, I was asking him, what do you do for pest control or fertilizer and he was like, oh, let me show you. And he brings me over, and he has this giant 200-gallon tub, and he opened it up. It had a rubber top to it, a flat top to it. He opened it up, and it was this green, gooey substance in there. And because it was a little translation going back and forth, and he was explaining that's what it was. I assumed that what his nutrition was. I was like, well, what do you mean? It looks like a algae soup or something, and it probably was algae soup, but it was just explaining that they don't buy stuff in, they make everything on farm. And I was like, wow, that's pretty interesting. Like I said, even though I went to Asia and everything, I never saw anything where these people were so remote, you really couldn't bring in. Like I said, the city was 6 hours away, through the mountains, so it was a hike. So, anyways, we left Colombia right when the world was ending. The COVID was coming, and I think Peru shut their border right as we were leaving. So we were really close to staying a lot longer. But so we get back, and then people talk about it as the Great Reset, and it's sounds like a conspiracy theory, but it was actually very fortunate. So at the time, I was working full time for a large conventional cranberry operation.
Right.
And I love reading. I was reading up to 100 books a year, or listening to them, I'm working and everything. And so like I said, I just got back from my trip. Everything at the world, and it was very unique because I was studying for my commercial pesticide license. So in Massachusetts, you're allowed to have a private one. And then if you wanted to apply on someone else's and get paid for it, you have to get a commercial license. So I was reading it. I was ready to take that test that Tuesday or whatever. And then the world shut down on Monday, and they didn't have the remote testing available yet. It was still, it was very new to everything. So by the time they set it up, I was over it. I was like, nope. I want to burn my pesticide license if I can.
Yep.
So like I said, it was that COVID. It was that week that the world shut down. I was supposed to take that commercial test, and I would have been a commercial certifier and, uh, commercial, chemical hitman, I guess. But so, like I said, fortunately, COVID prevented that from happening. And so I was still, at the family farm, we still hadn't transferred equity yet. So my father still owned it. I was managing it. And then that's why I was working on this other operation to get experience and just, to help with the income and everything. So another thing about that farm is I was spraying, their style is high input, high output. So
Right.
it's a corporate farm is what it is. And one of their guidelines is they want the highest output no matter what. Don't break rules, don't, follow the law, but, apply everything. Basically, there's no limit on what you can do as long as you have a
Right.
good output. So, in that spring, I was working for them and I was listening to Silent Spring and I'm spraying at night and I'm looking around and man, it is pretty quiet over here. It's a giant off, I think we were like 300 acre, the whole 300 acres, no trees, dust, just all cranberries, which before COVID and everything, I thought was like, the goal. But then, like I said, reading Silent Spring, seeing all these other operations, like outside of the country, and then like reading, listening to Silent Spring as I'm spraying, it was kind of an eye opener. I'm like, wow, I really got to change myself because this is I don't want to, I may not be able to rent Silent Spring in their farm, but on my farm, I'm not going to allow that. I knew I had to change. So fortunately, like I said, my father was, we were low input, medium output, I guess, meaning like I said, one set fertilizer. We always had birdhouses. It was something my dad liked to do over the winter, make birdhouses. So he was,
Cool.
he worked for the Peace Corps in Botswana. So he was like a marine fisheries expert. So he was a little more in tune with nature, but so we had some benefits there. And then so that year I ended up on like a birdhouse building spree. I think I built like 200 birdhouses. And I know. I convinced the company. I'm like, no. If you look at the old literature, because cranberries have been an industry for 200 years, so there's been a lot of literature about it. I talk about in the old days, like if you build birdhouses and promote birds, like you can reduce your pest pressure and this and that. So in the commercial operation, they had insane pest pressure. Great example is cranberry weevil. Typically, the threshold's 4 for when you have to act, and you would sweep and get 100 there. And I'd never seen 100, in the sweep net. I just thought it was insane. And they'd go and spray, and then the next week instead of be 100, it'd be 50. So like it wasn't even close to like controlling it. And that all at the same time as all these things are doing other things with the ecosystem. So anyways, I went on a bird building spree. I tried to do one birdhouse for every 2 acres there, and then I did the same thing in my farm. And then I ended up. I learned about what's the company? It was Advancing Eco Ag. John Kemp. He has a lot of neat free stuff. He's very confident in himself, and so I was like, I'll try this stuff. I went through his product line. They set up a whole program with sap sampling, and the idea was there is to keep your plant very healthy so you don't have insect or pest pressures.
Yeah.
But the fertilizers are very expensive. I was shocked. I did 2 years of that, and then I wasn't getting the plants may have been healthier, but the return was just not there. And then as like I said, he had a lot of neat stuff. I don't want to bash them. It's a great company, and if you're growing golden cranberries, yeah, maybe it's worth it. So, but I later learned was someone was telling me, oh yeah, they just like ferment plants and they do this and they do that. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, yeah, they don't the stuff was it opened up my world to fertilizer or plant amendments that was sticky and gooey and stinky and you could spill it on yourself but it wouldn't burn your skin. It was so that was it was an eye-opener seeing like these alternative plant amendments. So like I said, it was good to do it. It was, but like I said, unfortunately, I couldn't afford it. The prices were going down on our return end, and then learning that yeah, he was probably just making it with stuff he had on his own farm or he had access to, so it wasn't anything you know uh, magical. It was just he just was, I don't know, had read a lot more.
You
So,
learned a lot more, right?
yeah. But like I said, it was neat because it opened up my world there's more to it than just chemical salt-based fertilizers. So then I started then I started doing plant. I read a book, Biodynamic Principles, from the 1920s, and it was very neat. I forget the author, Efren Preffer, I think, or something like that. A Swiss doctor, and written in the 1920s. It's an easy read. It's like 100 pages or so, but he predicted that in the future farms would be making their own amendments, that they wouldn't be buying things in. They could close the loop on their farm in terms of what they're buying in, and trying to do everything in house. And like I said, this book came out in the 1920s. The only thing he didn't predict was World War II, and that changed farming since then, because after World War II, that's when fertilizers became common, and pesticides and all that. So like I said, I was reading that book, and it was funny. They talk about fermenting horsetail, which is a plant that we physically remove with hand weeders because it's considered a nuisance, or we try to destroy it on the farm. So I was like, wait, there's value to this, and they talk about how powerful it was for plant amendments. And then the other one was stinging nettle, which I have a cranberry farm, and then the wife and I, we also do diversified livestock. So we pat, and she being my better half, grew up on a dairy farm where her father, because he was so cheap, he refused to allow his cows to stay in place. He'd rather have them go out and pasture, and he always pastured them every day, twice a day. As long as as long as it wasn't snow on the ground. He didn't get a premium for it. He never got anything for it. It's just he didn't think it was smart bringing the food to the animal, let the animal go to the grass. So, so like I said, it was, he retired and everything. He was very successful, but like I said, he never got a premium. He just did it just because for him, it was the correct way to farm.
Right.
So anyways, long story short, she wanted to have cows, and we had cows at our house here in Plimpton, where we intensely rotationally graze. So we bought a house that had grown up pasture. They were all scrub pines, bushy pines. We got it cleared it out, and there was really there was no grass there. And then just over the years of intensive grazing, doing bale grazing, and then running chickens with them as well. It's amazing, within it's typical New England, sandy soils, clay soils, rocks, not much topsoil, especially because it's been, the Pilgrims have been here for whatever, 400 years. So it's been farmed, intensely over those years. But within 5 years or so, our organic matter went from nothing to it's unbelievable what it is. When I want to bring the boys fishing, we dig a hole to find the worms. Which we never, we never had that before. There's no point in going to the store, we have it in the backyard. So because of cows and, raising broiler chicken for meat. And so, I was doing that as well as doing the primary thing. And I guess it was neat to see it on the homestead. You close your farm circle, the farm responds better. So it's I'm trying to think how, I can't graze a cow on a dog because probably destroy it and this and that. So how do you recreate that? So anyways, yeah. And so that I was trying to recreate that. I understood the biology there was something to it besides just chemical fertilizers. And then, so I was working with this AEA program, and I thought it smelled real stinky. It was, it was very unique to me. I thought it was crazy. And then, I had someone sent over this guy, Keith Wilder, shows up in this beat up old truck. So Keith, for people who don't know, at the time was working for Fish Brew. That was really his, him and Leighton Morrison's, their little, project, I guess, together. And so Leighton had always been pushing him like, dude, you have like a gold mine with, so the Fish Brew derives from these 3 fish farms. One's on Cape Cod that's been continuously operated for over 120 years. They have one in Central Mass that's a larger indoor facility, and I think they raise like 1 million pounds of barramundi, which are an Australian kelp, Australian carp.
Right.
And then they also have another one in New Hampshire. So, Leighton had already knew about this biology, and so Keith was just getting going. This was his first year, so he, like I said, someone sent them over to my farm. I was in the middle of spraying the stinky crab meal stuff I had, and I was like, "Oh yeah, good to meet you. Don't mind me. I smell like fish. This and that." I had no idea who he was. I thought, I didn't know why he was being sent over from a mutual friend, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I know a lot about fish." I'm like, "Yeah, sure," and then he explained what he was doing and what he did, what his products line were. So at the time they had what they call like soil conditioners and soil probiotics,
Right.
which basically were, these biological inoculants. And with the AEA program, they had biological inoculants, but they were all in a dry powder form.
Right.
So, bugs in the jug, but they were better than, I had to use some bugs in the jug where it's just like 1 or 2 bacterias and with like a bunch of water. So there's, the AEA one through, through their line. They had like maybe like a dozen in there, but it was like a dry powder and everything. So anyways, Keith, says, "Oh yeah, I got this stuff and, you should really try it." So I was like, "All right, I'll buy a tote of it." So by the time it shows up to the farm, and this kind of comes full circle. It goes, we're getting towards bloom, and we've always been taught is, you must sterilize the flower so no bad pathogens get in there. You don't have cranberry fruit rot and everything.
Yeah.
So bloom is just starting to happen, and I have Keith's stuff in my tank, and for cranberries we inject it through the sprinkler system. And then it goes out through the sprinkler system, and that's how we apply everything. So I'm starting to inject it. I have my rates down and everything, like 2 gallons an acre or something. And I'm like thinking like, yeah, he said there's bacteria and some fungi in here and diatoms, and like I'm
all
like
the
watching
stuff you're
it.
not supposed to be doing,
I know,
you're doing, right?
exactly. Yeah, and like I said, it goes back to being sterile. Like you've always been told you're going to be sterile on the farm, like do these crazy things to try to sterilize. It's like an ER room. And I'm looking at it as the tank's going down and the stuff's going out. I'm like, oh boy, this is going to be really good or really bad. Because, I guess it was so different from when I had been taught. And again, remember, I was taught on the commercial license as well. So I was like doubled down with it. Yep. And for those who don't know, too, if you have at least in Massachusetts, if you have a pesticide license, you have to get credits every year. And part of those credits is learning how to use more pesticides, not how to use less, but how to use more, which it is kind of crazy now that
go figure,
red pilled, So like I said, I watched the stuff go out and I was like, oh boy, this is good. I was getting real nervous. I'm like, well, Keith said it'll be all right. This guy I just met like, a few weeks ago. So we'll see. And it turned out to be a good harvest. I was, like I said, I applied it, I rinsed it in and everything. Like I said, right. It was just a scattered bloom, right as bloom was just starting to happen. So, so it was kind of like for me, it was an eye opener. I'm like, well, maybe, I've seen all these other farms throughout the country, throughout the world. And some of them, they say they don't need to worry about this being sterile and they seem to do all right. So maybe there's something to it. And then I learned about, it's all about the biology podcast. And then I was up, because I started researching Keith Wilder, and I think he was on there.
Yep.
So like one of his first ones, and so then now you guys have become my community, is that people I could tune into at least, and or listen to new ideas and everything, and so so that was like 2022. So like I said, I just bought one tote of that year. I learned about oh yeah, I also I had bought just a simple soil test they can do on farm. It does a
Right.
bacteria to fungi ratio. So I went on one of our hybrids, planted a few years ago. We spent a lot of money rebuilding it, and I went out there, and it was like my prized possession, and did the sample, and I looked at the test. It was 97% bacteria, 3% fungi. I'm like, oh man, I don't know what that means, but it doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem right. And this is before, like I said, before I met Keith. So I was like I was still trying to figure out like what does that mean? Obviously, it's really out of whack. I don't know. I don't know what cranberry is supposed to be, but that can't be good.
Right.
So I mean, then especially knowing that like when you spray a pesticide, there's always 10% makes it through. There's always a certain percentage makes it through. And then, so if they're making it through, usually those are the bad ones that you don't want. So I'm thinking if it's like the fruit rot, they're bad fungi. If it's 3% fungi, it's probably all the bad ones are out there. So, anyways, as I continue down my journey, I learn about Andy Marsh and her soil testing. So I sent a sample out there and get the results, and they were low, but they weren't anything too crazy. Fortunately, I had gone down the road a little bit, and now I had a benchmark of where to aim for. And I was still working for the other large operation. I was no longer full time. 2 years ago, I went to a consulting gig. So so basically, I went there for 3 days a week. I'd help them. They created like an R&D division. So they were
Right.
trying, they were big operation, big target, salesmen love to come. And then this is, 2022 was like the year of the biology. So they, or 2023, it was biology was 2024. It was just starting to take off where everyone had their own line of some sort of biological amendments. And
Yeah.
so in our R&D division, I was like, well, we should test this. We have all these salesmen come in here, and they can unlock phosphorus. They can do this. They can do that. So we ended up doing a test of 3 different products. One of them was fish brew, one was bio level, and one was a rhizolink, which was, like I said, the rhizolink was like supposed to be, I don't know, it was like a 2 bacteria, blend.
Right.
The bio level was like maybe like 6 or so. And then the
Mhm.
fish brew was just, who knows what's in there, a lot,
Just
millions of them. I know. So we did 2 sites. So we worked with ocean spray scientists, and then we replicated it on a separate bed just to double check.
yeah.
And fortunately, it was actually, like I said, because I've been kind of doing this stuff on my own. So the other scientists, we got her involved. So she was like, oh, I'm going to measure like the plant upright density, how many berries per certain section, what the weight is per berry. Like stuff that's like, yes, it's important, but like, doesn't really matter. I don't know. and then on where we replicated it someplace else, we did the soil biology report. So, and because some of the questions in house were wondering, like I said, they were high input, high output. They weren't opposed to biology. We didn't know would they survive the regiment of pesticides, would they survive flooding. So we had to try to find an answer for that. So we did like a pre-season test, and then we did a post-season test right before
Mhm.
harvest. And same thing. We did 3 different products in the control, and we sent the sample to Andy. So Andy's great. If you have never done one, she gives you your result, and then she gives you a second page that describes your results. because it's, like I said, it's different than normal dealing with a tissue sample or a soil sample, and they just give you green charts or red charts, or they're pretty
Yeah.
straightforward. And even then, they usually are all green, and it doesn't really tell you anything. So, but anyways, we sent it through her, and she like, we didn't tell her what product, which bed was which product, but she knew that the fish brew because of the diatoms were everywhere. She's like, I know what this product is, and so it was neat. Like I said, the fish brew and the bio level, the fish brew I think was a little better. The bio level was probably second in my opinion, and then the third product was, like I said, it was like a chemistry company that had like a biological twist to it. So we knew which ones now going on the road of to eliminate over there.
Yeah, right away you knew.
yeah. So like I said, it was neat. It was neat to, like I said, I was doing it on my own farm, so it's like you try not to like be too biased about it, but and I had convinced that company to buy Fish Brew. They bought, I think the first year they bought 2 totes of it, of 2 different soil conditioners, and they have a crew of like 30 guys that work in the cranberry division, and they go into the chem shed, and like, wow, what is this stuff? It's like we had air blowing in the totes to keep the stuff alive, and it was very different than what they're used to, and so there was learning curves there. Some of the guys they clogged up the filters and when applying, so we're still trying to mitigate some of that, but like I said, this stuff is it's something about it. You can't beat it. So, and then they ended up buying some fish hydroslate. They bought a truckload of it. I was like, geez, guys, go all the way in. Oh, why don't you? And then the neat thing with the fish brew fish hydrolysate is they take the whole fish that, so the fish brew, their goal is to grow a fish and sell a fish live, because that's their business. And then, but they have die-off throughout the process. So they'll take the whole fish and they grind it down. The only thing that doesn't end up in the product is the scales and the bones. So a lot of these other fish hydrolysates, they'll remove the fish oil and sell that separately. They'll, so like some of that gets skimmed away from other companies, but the fish brew guys are very good. They keep all that in there. And the thing about the fish oil and all those other things is they add amino acids. And for those who don't know, amino acids they can allow the plant to absorb calcium and other nutrition up to 1,000 times more efficient. So like, even though like they may not like make the plant grow itself, it makes the plant be able to absorb things a lot better. So so where am I going now? Okay. And then, all right. So we did the biology test, and then, all right. So then when I was on with you guys, I think the first time I had mentioned the Leighton, about the biodynamic book and everything. And, the fish brew, of course, I love it. So then so we had some hand weeders, cranberries. Like I said, we do have herbicides we can use, but like I said, I've been like trying to distance myself from that. So one of the things I was doing more of was hand removing any weeds we had. So Leighton had mentioned, oh yeah, look, you should stuff anything you can. You should just go hog wild with it. And I was like, yeah, all right, I'll think about it. And then so I ended up doing it. I went crazy with it. We ended up, so I was 23, was it? I think I did that year. So typically when the hand weeders go out, they go out and just pull everything. So, and historically, I would take that plant debris, and just compost it. So we have like an on-farm compost, but I haven't gotten crazy with composting yet. I think it takes a little more attention than what I can give it. So, but historically, we would, I would just compost it there just to break it down, essentially. So, Leighton had mentioned you should try fermenting it. Like I had played with the idea, and so I tried a few different methods. One of them was I took a IBC tote, a 260-gallon tote, and stuffed it. Like I kept putting the plant material in fresh off the bog, and beating it down, pressing it down as much as I could. And then I ended up, I used the EM inoculant
Right.
and with water and molasses. And I know I think there's other people or other companies that provide it. It's just the one I knew of at the time. So I used there as a biological inoculant, the molasses, and filled up with water and let the stuff cook. And at the end of it, I tested it, sent it out I had to call a bunch of labs before I found someone that would actually test it. And so they put it underneath like as a manure sludge test. Waters lab in Georgia. Like I said, it was a little different, and so I sent it down there and get the result back, and I'm looking at it. It's like a 7-1-14, so like a 7 nitrogen, 1 phosphorus, 14 potassium. I'm like, man, this is interesting. I'm trying to scratch in my head, like, what does this mean? I'm looking at all the micros. The micros are, all like there's always something there. It's not like it's overloaded with one or the other. A little bit of boron. Actually, calcium was up there. It was like a 12%. And it was very, I was like, all right, so I guess I'll just mix it with the fish hydrolysate and use that. So I ended up now I do like a 1-to-1 ratio of ferment, the fish brew, and then apply it that way.
Now, I'm going to pause you there just for a second, because it really sounds like what you're doing now is what the gentleman with the coffee beans and his 200-gallon tank was doing. That's exactly what you're doing now. So now you can connect the two, brother, right?
Yeah. It's funny because I never, like all these things, like I went down these roads, but I never knew there were like official names for them, like Bokashi, and I just was like, I don't know, 30T fermented plant amendments, So like I said, I didn't listen to the coffee one, but I listened to the previous guy who talked about fermented cannabis. So which I ended up doing this past year, which I wanted to, same thing. I have a home garden, and I bought some plants online, and sure enough, I get some males that show up, and same thing. Typically, you pull them out, compost them. I was like, you know what, this year I'm gonna ferment them. And my second year fermenting, let's ferment them. So I fermented them down, and the result was it was a great use for it. I forget what the analyst. Every one of these I send out for analysis. I didn't put down what was in it, because you never know in the states. Some states allow it, some states they don't. So I just put down like plant, test number 4 or whatever.
Yeah.
But that one came out great. The other neat one was, so I did mention the horse tail and stinging nettle were in the biodynamics book. So I was like, I have access to this stuff. I might also try it. So I did 55 gallons of stinging nettle, cut it fresh off the, in our pasture. We had a giant tree of it, cut it all down, chopped it up, put it in a 55-gallon drum, fermented it, bokashi, whatever you call it. After I think 30, I haven't been doing the 2 weeks. I've been doing like 30 days, because I didn't know what, I probably could, 2 weeks would probably be all right. But after 30 days, I opened up the top of it, and again, all I see is liquid. I'm like, last I saw it poked in here, there was plants. So I strained it all out. It was about 5 gallons of plant material left. The rest of it was liquid. At 55 gallons.
55 gallons is what you started with? Okay,
I was shocked. Like I said, because I stuffed that thing. Same thing. I stuffed as much as I could. And usually up until that point, when I had been fermenting, I'd probably get it'd probably break down like a third or so. Never completely gone like that. So that was neat to see. That was very cool to see. So, all that.
What did you change in that 55-gallon drum to get that result?
I don't know. I don't know. So up until then, I had been doing multi-species plants, because I had So whose book? Nigel Palmer has a great book, Plant Amendments for the Garden or something like that, and so he talks about it. And his theory though was like, you can find all the biology in the forest. You find the white mold. You don't need to buy the EM. And I'm like, I know it's true, but it's less than $1 a gallon when I'm done with it. Like it's still I'm still saving money, as far as I'm concerned. Like you can't buy a fertilizer on the farm for that price.
Yeah.
Um, so where was I going with that? So Nigel Palmer. Yeah, I forget what I was going.
Well,
Anyways,
we
yeah,
just
see,
finished the 55-gallon
yeah,
drum,
okay, yeah. So he had said, no, you're not supposed to do multi-species. You're supposed to do one species, and then and so I was like, well, I never thought about that, but I guess I could. So then, like I said, then it kind of brought me back to the biodynamics with the stinging nettle. I did the horsetail, which is another, that was high in silica naturally. So
right?
silica is it's a organism, it's a plant mineral that is needed, but no, it's like carbon, where it's like your background of carbon is everywhere. So you need it, you just don't know how much you need, and vice versa.
Mhm.
So that one was very similar though. I fermented it, broke down. It was, a tenth of what was in there initially. It was really surprising. It all became liquid. And I strain it out to get it through the sprayer. So it's not like there's
Now, let me ask, what micron are you going to when you're straining it out for your sprayer?
okay, so our pumps have a 50 micron filter on
Okay.
them. So that's what and I was training them like pretty light, like I had these like it was like grates like that, because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was just enough to like keep the plant back.
Mhm.
So most of the stuff went through. I never really had any issues, but
Okay.
um, and so part of the concern is we had these things called pop-up heads. So I guess I mentioned we're sprinklers everywhere. A lot of my farm are impact rainbirds, so they don't really
Mhm.
need they need some filtration, but nothing too crazy. Yeah, there's the book. He's a great. I tried to recommend him before. If you ever get a chance, I have his number. I could always refer him to. Smart
Yeah,
guy, very smart
please.
guy. So
Please. Yeah.
he'd be a great asset. Oh yeah, and so then the newer bogs have these pop up heads. They're like lawn sprinklers, but they're twice the size. And the
Okay.
idea is, and the nice thing with those is they're there year round, so you can do post harvest applications,
Cool.
which I've been getting into as well. Um, so and then trying to think what else. So then this past year, so I started convert. We do ag tourism on my family farm, where people come during harvest, put the waders on, go into the bogs. A lot of people just want to throw cranberries around. Some people want to work. It's a whole experience getting in the water, get to talk to me, the farmer. And my
Yeah.
wife helped me. She's the very good at it, because I'd be stressed because our harvest, this pump dies or something's happening, and then like I have to go over and hi everyone, like try to be happy if it's like a stressful day, but it works out. It's good because you see a lot of people, and a
Mhm.
lot of these people, they like they plan like 6 9 months in advance to come to see it. Um so anyways, we do ag tourism. People always talk about organic. How come you don't have an organic bog, this and that? And I was like, well, I don't know. Maybe I should start doing that. And I have
Mhm.
cranberries. Uh, we, so the cranberry industry was 200 years old. They basically started with clones from Cape Cod. Um,
Mhm.
and so we call them native varieties. So I have two native varieties, a early black variety and a Hal variety. They're both small fruit, probably typical of what you would see pre 1950s in terms of, you know, for your cranberry sales essentially. But unfortunately, they've kind of gone to the wayside because a lot of these beds are over 100 years old. So
Mhm.
they show their wear just naturally, like anyone who's 100 years old, you're going to have age spots and everything else. So, but yeah, I still had a few of them left, and I always wanted to keep one variety of each. I would never get rid of all of them, just to have that diversity there, just because,
Yeah.
everyone's a little different. So one of mine, a Hal variety, just a 1 acre Hal variety, I looked at some of my second year. So looked at the previous year, and I only had applied one pesticide on it. So I was like, well, I'm already this close to it. Why don't I just convert it over? and we'll see how it goes. And people ask about it all the time. We sell fresh fruit. Yeah, it is pretty neat. Like I said, like sometimes we have farmers that come on these bog tours and like, wait, you're growing native plants? I'm like, yeah, yeah. Like, like to try to explain it to them and like, wow, that's crazy. So anyways, the second year converting that one over to organic.
Hmm.
Um, so that, that's in the process. And then, we're starting to sell that for fresh fruit. Every good farm tour ends at the farm store. So, trying
Of
to add some
course, of course.
some value added.
And
So
do you have
trying,
you have Keith Welda's fish brew products in your farm store for
I
people to take
should.
home?
That's a good point.
Yeah,
I didn't even think about that. Oh
yeah,
man, good thing I came. That's a good idea. I don't know why, that's a great idea. I should start to sell that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they'd probably love it.
Oh yeah, they would. I know Keith would love that if you helped him out.
So last year, like I said, R&D division, we did some fermenting at
Mhm.
the company I consult for, and I was still fermenting on my own, going hog wild about it. And then, so the other kid I work with, Alex, was saying, oh, there's this Regelia fungicide. It's a bio fungicide. It's organic, but it's insanely expensive. It's like 250 a gallon.
Yeah.
But it uses extract of Japanese knotweed. He was like, why don't we try that? Why don't we try extracting Japanese knotweed? So here in New England, it's an invasive plant.
Yeah.
You can't seem to kill it anyway. So last year, and at this point we had started to learn that you got to be careful for plant hormones of when you harvest a plant. That if
Mhm.
if you harvest a plant that's blooming, it's going to have those plant blooming hormones in it.
Right.
So we knew, all right, if we're looking for like a biofungicide, let's wait for this Japanese knotweed to be fermenting, or I mean fermenting to be blooming, and then we'll
Mhm.
chop it down and ferment it. And because we also knew Japanese knotweed have a lot of good like even health benefits for humans. So like, all right, we'll see what happens with that. And Alex had a great idea. It's like, well, we got to take the root too. We can't just take the top part. I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. So we took the whole stalk. We had to make sure we found stuff that wasn't sprayed with Roundup or mowed, or so we were able
Yeah.
to find some sites. Make sure it was untouched, clean, and we got that. So that's cooking. That's been cooking all winter essentially. So we'll see how that turns out. But it's neat even now. Like I know all these guys talk about 2 week fermenting. Like I go to this, it's been fermenting, I don't know, 6 months. You go tap on
Mhm.
the side of it and it's still bubbling, boiling. There's still air in there. So it's something's going on.
Yeah.
So like I said, I haven't strained it yet, but I'm excited for that. So that's going to be an
Now,
input for
are you
this
going
year.
to send a sample to Andy so she can take a look at it?
I should actually, I should because I haven't done any biological samples on these. They've just all been NPK sampling. So I
Yeah.
should send over to see what's in there. I have a microscope, but I don't know. My eyes cross when I look at it. So, and then this past harvest, unfortunately, the industry is oversupplied. So
Mhm.
what was happening was there was fruit that was getting thrown away, essentially, good fruit that was getting
Mhm.
thrown away to try to control the supply and this and that. Dirty secret of the industry. Probably shouldn't
Oh
have said
yeah.
it, but whatever. A lot of farms when they get this happens. So I had heard of fermenting fruit, and I figured it was always going to be more valuable to sell the cranberries than it was to ferment it. I'll never get a chance. And so this past year, I heard they were getting rid of it. Good stuff. Good native fruit too. They didn't want the native fruit because it didn't fit the criteria for the size and this and that. So, but I'm like, ooh, native fruit. That's what I prefer, anyways, because that probably
Yeah.
has all the goodies, built from nature, not from man. So,
Mhm.
anyways, we and Alex, we did about 6 totes filled with cranberries. And so I did one. So on my own farm, I did one inside and I did one outside. Um, we stuffed them up. The thing with cranberries is they float in water. So that was well, once you add the water, what do you do? So I ended up making like a blender blade on a long drill and, drilled away and tried to blend them up as much as I could. and
Mhm.
it smells amazing. It smells like a wine, like a fermented wine or something like that. So
Well, Hillbilly's saying, cranberry moonshine,
yeah, yeah. It does smell like that. It really does. Like, uh, and I've actually joked with some people when I'm showing, everyone's like, "Man, Cass, you're like the mad scientist over here." Because like I said, no one's seen, no one's ever heard of this stuff in my circle over here, fermenting
Yep.
plants. It's nonsense. So like one time I was showing people, I had like a little sample jar, that I was like, that had like, it was like my first test and I wanted to like see if it would settle. And I always kept on to it. So I was showing people it and like, it was like joke, like people were smelling it and like, oh, someone would like joke that they were going to drink it. Like, sure, I'll drink it. Took a little sip,
Yep. Yep.
and it didn't get me sick. I skipped my next meal, but that was fine. Didn't kill me. So I guess the fermented cranberry one is going to be neat. I'm excited for that. Another one I'm going to get tested, but I'm not going to. From my research, what I've read, especially in all these books I've read, is like if you ferment the fruit, you want to reapply that same fruit to the same plant. So you don't want to like take citrus, ferment it, and apply it to an apple tree. You want to do
Yeah.
citrus to citrus, apple to apple. So it really makes a lot of sense because you think that the plant spent its whole year to build this fruit, so it must have all that energy, nutrition are in that fruit. And now it must be just a little blast of all those goodies it spent all year at. So I'm excited to see how
Yeah.
that turns out. And
Well, I think you're
so
going to see some absolutely amazing results because, like, we talk about, feeding plants, and, the ripe fruit, as you were saying, that the mother plant has put all that energy into that, and in nature, it would just go back into the soil for the next generation. So you're just making a concentrate of what Mother Nature has, done all of her life, is put that back in. But and we talk about particle size and having it in suspension, and that's what you're doing. You're allowing it to not have to go through the biology first. You've already taken that step out, so it's easier for the plant and the biology in the plant to use that material, so then the plant doesn't have to spend the energy to
yeah.
make that. It's already there. Fantastic.
100%. Actually, you bring up a great point. So all of these like tests I've been doing, they're like lower in numbers than like what we're normally used to seeing. But I'm like, all right, you got to remember it's organically chemistry based, meaning the plant can instantly absorb it. And this last year was the first year I bought fertilizer, organic pelletized chicken fertilizer.
Right.
And it's like a 543 with a 9% calcium. There's a farm in New York that that makes these products. And so like I said, I've never, I've kind of like played with it for other applications of stuff, but never like a granular application. And so I went and applied it last year. And typically when you apply granular chemical fertilizers, is you get streaking everywhere, where you'll get like a lot of growth where it hits heavy, and then it'll be yellow where it doesn't touch it, even though it's like a few inches over. So like it was just something I was used to seeing, but with the pelletized granular fertilizer, it was even though I applied it. I knew, I'm like, normally the stuff I would know, which I'd see streaks, I'd be used to seeing that. Like I never saw any of that. Like it went down in the plant and then it slowly spread throughout the soil. So it was, like I said, it was neat seeing that. So this year I'm going even further with those guys. Like I said, it's kept at that point of like I close my circle in on, I can making my own farm amendments. I'm buying stuff that's within 500 miles of my farm, so I'm not having it trucked throughout the whole world or whatever.
Right.
And the plants seem to love it. So, and then I got one more thing I got to mention is, so last year. So the year I met Keith, we were renovating a bog, and so he, convinced me to buy that for the fish brew. And so I was like, you know what? It's a new bed. I'm gonna bring this bed in on just biology, or just, I'm not gonna use chemical fertilizers. I'm gonna use just biology instead of using high phosphorus or whatever, chemical for phosphorus. Use the biology, use fish brew products, my own stuff. So yeah, like I said, I met him on that bed. So I was like, I might as well bring it in. And typically, when you bring in a new bed, it takes about 3 years before it comes to production, and then from 3 to 5 years is when it starts to ramp up. And typically, that first year of production is usually all raw and ends up in the woods, anyways, because the plant is over pushed through chemical fertilizer. So
Yeah.
I was like, well, maybe I'll bring it in slower, going biology route. But maybe I won't have that on year 3, have that issue of having too much rotten fruit. And it worked out great. It came in, I picked it this past year. It was a little high, but yeah, usually they're like double than what I saw. So I think my test was like 15%. Usually it's like 30% plus is typical. So it was neat to see. And then that same bed, I remember I was flooding it for either winter flood or I don't know, maybe during harvest or something. And so we flood the beds to help with protect during the winter extremes, or during harvest, but we water harvest. The water acts like a facilitator in that process. So I flooded the bed, went to go remove boards, through like a little flume, we call them, like where the water enters or leaves. And I'm pulling these boards out. And I'm like, man, these boards are covered in worms. I've never seen this before, so it was neat to see. I'm like, wow. So this bed, like I said, it wasn't getting hit with the nasty phosphorus. It wasn't getting hit with the nasty chemicals, and there were worms on it, and it's like, well, how does that happen? I mean, it gets flooded at least twice a year. Like, where do the worms go? I'm like, I don't know where they go. I don't know how they get there, but they were there, So I tell my other cranberry growers about it, and they're like, I had pictures of it. I had to take pictures of it. Show people, they're like, I guess, yeah, maybe you're all right. Maybe they just happened to be there. Who knows? So, but I was excited because, they're little, they're working for free essentially. And if they're there, the birds are going to be there. The birds are going to be happy. The whole ecosystem. And it's been neat to see on my farm, the ecosystem become more balanced. I don't get the crazy fluctuations we used to get. But the farm I consult for, they have a native variety bed, been in production since the 1800s. It's still produces pretty good. And I was on it this week, and we were installing sprinklers, and I looked down. I'm like, wow, there's a worm there. And I was like, for me, I was so excited because they were, a legacy farm. They've been through the, green revolution. And now we're on that other side where, we're mitigating some of those harms and all because I've been pushing biology for them. Like there's been a lot of resistance, like, oh, cranberries grow in sand's sterile. There's no biology. That's a waste of time. But like I said, I saw it this week and I was just so happy. I'm like, yes, I'm vindicated. There's, it was a bed that, like I said, I got in 2 years of fish brew, plus everything else they put onto it. It was one of the top producers last year. And then this spring, seeing an earthworm on it, and like, yes, I'm just so happy to see that because, it's just all about, like you mentioned, one candle lights them all or whatever. It's, it's part of like bringing light back to this place. So
one lit candle can light many without ever diminishing its own light. So
yes,
you're a lit candle sharing that light with others, and we can hope that they're going to light up more and more, especially that commercial grow. And you're seeing a worm there. It shows that the life, which is necessary, is coming back. What they really need to understand is their plant is every single cell combined makes the plant, and who controls the cellular development is the biology. Without that life, you can't have health. You can't have prosperity in that plant. So seeing that worm, I know, like I'm in Northern Canada, and when a farmer was switching over, as soon as they started seeing worms and mushrooms, they're going, okay, I've got it now. It's there. It's coming, right? So that's a fantastic example of life coming back.
Yeah. And like I said, for me, it's like special because it's that's where I was reading Silent Spring. That's where I like had my like mental breakdown. Like I have to get away from chemistry grown farm. Like I have to change this. And like I maybe like I said, that's why I focused on my farm, and I was still working for him, and I was still like pushing it. Even though I was getting resistance, I'm like, come on, it's cheap, you guys. A little bit here, a little bit there, and then like I said, the great thing, the fish brew was relatively cheap. But like the great thing is all these companies now have like a biological line. So like it wasn't just, me saying it. Now everyone's saying biology was the word.
Yeah.
So like I said, I was so happy this week to see that. I took a picture of it, sent it to, like the head guy and everything. And so he was pretty happy about it too. So, and like I said, this farm, it's been a long, it was built pre-Green Revolution. So they had experienced it, but that knowledge has been lost. So, and now we're getting on that backside of it. So it's like I said, for me, that was one of my highlight of the year already. And I got one more thing I got to mention before like I said, we're probably getting to that time. But so Ocean Spray had their annual meeting, and we went down. Me and the family went to it, and so one of the big concerns now in our industry is they had an ag scientist talk about this false blossom disease. So false blossom disease is it's a bacterium that is transferred from blunt nose and leafhopper. New Jersey had it in the 1940s, and it almost wiped out their growing industry there. And that kind of like spurred on the development of new varieties and everything. So, anyways, now it's making it's making a resurgence. It's in every growing region now, and she's talking about like you must control the blunt nose leafhopper, which are everywhere. So how do you control that? You must plant resistant varieties, but there are no resistant varieties that like there's like some more resistant, but they can still get it. And so basically it's like doom and gloom. You got to watch out for it. If you see one little blunt nose leafhopper, which is like tiny little thing, like you must spray the whole farm and everything. And so I was like, well, she was talking about it. She's a smart girl. She gets it. And she knew about me and my craziness and my, my bright light, I guess. So eventually, after the conversation, after her presentation, I was like doing some research, and I was realizing, because all right, so if that false blossom is in the insect, and the insect, chews on, so it's in other plants as well. So it's chewing on other plants, jumping on the cranberry, chewing on that. Then it's basically once that enters the cranberry, it makes the cranberry sterile. It won't produce a fruit. And if you renovate a bed at 30 to 50,000 an acre, it can be a complete wash within a few years. So it's very scary. So I was like doing research, and one of the natural remedies, or in the natural world, are endophytes. Endophytes are fungi and bacteria that live within plants. So, and just like the false blossom that lives within the plant. So I'm like thinking, I ended up talking to her about it afterwards. I'm like, what do you think about endophytes? She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, if you have just like the soil, if you have a diverse endophyte system within the plant, that means that bad bacteria, that bad false blossom, maybe it can't take over because it has to compete with others. Maybe what's going on is, a lot of, typical farming, a lot of these farms, very chemical based. Maybe those plants are sterile on the inside, and that's how they run into these issues. And she's like, wow, I never thought about that. It's all about the biology. Exactly. So I'm hoping they end up doing research down on that road. Cause like I said, like, she's the expert in it. And it's basically try to control a blunt nose leafhopper, which is, like trying to control mosquitoes in the summer night. Like, you're going to burn the whole world down to control them, or, so, and the neat thing, so endophytes, they're in the fish brew products. They're probably in kabashi, or the fermenting products. I'm assuming. I know EM has it in them. So, they're out there. And if you do your own composting, make compost teas, I'm sure you're introducing those as well. So it's a whole nother spin to it that you never thought of. Basically trying to like promote the plant's self-defense mechanism to, prevent it from happening. So we
Well,
shall
that's
see. But
one of the things that cannabis growers are very familiar with, simply because we want a reaction. That's what creates the trichomes, is a plant reaction. So we want to actually initiate things like that. So yeah, your understanding of that and passing that on to her, if she does take that step, I think she's going to find that it's going to totally revolutionize her understanding. Now whether she's able to bring that out to people, or whether the people selling starts want to make that much more money or not, that's going to rely on the industry and what is allowed. Because it's not just the cranberries, it's all the other stuff that goes with it in the front and back end that they're selling that makes them a profit. So it's just like, I know in my study of treatment-free beekeeping, one of their main pests, if you have nematodes in the soil, it actually eats the larvae of that pest, and then your beehive doesn't get that pest. And that's basically what you're talking about, is having what's there battle against what's trying to come in. And it's like Leighton talks about it quite a bit, and I do as well, where if you have biology coming in, if it's needed there, it's going to proliferate there. If it's not, it becomes a food source for the biology that's already there. So the leaf hopper could be just a great food source for your plants this year, brother.
Yeah, that's true. And it was funny because I mentioned it to her, and she's like, "Oh, you know what? Like a few years ago, or the previous scientists had been working on using cranberry extract to help prevent the citrus green in Florida. So they had gone on that route, and the lady retired or whatever, something happened, and they never like finished that. But so like I was thinking like my other idea too was like, if you ferment cranberry. We have an oversupply of cranberry. You ferment it, and they always advertise cranberries and help prevent E. coli from sticking to your gut, because it like clings to it and it just allows it to, so you eat something with E. coli on it, it will get flushed through your system if you have so many cranberry benefits with you. So like I'm like, oh, but maybe fermenting cranberry can do that to the cranberry itself, or maybe endophytes through other products can, that false blossom shows up on the plant, the insect chews and inserts it, but now it can't do anything because it has an intense defense mechanism already within it. So we'll see which way they end up trying it. Like I said, I sent her like I researched it, I sent it over to her, and I didn't hear anything for like a day or two, and she finally got back. She's like, sorry. I went down the wormhole. It's like, you're right. The endophytes, there could be something there. I'm like, hey, that'd be awesome. So we'll see what comes of it. Like I said, because otherwise there's no real solution besides burning the world down, which is not practical. I'd rather not do that.
It's not the right solution. No.
Yeah, it's a solution, but no, it's not the right solution. Exactly. So well, yeah.
and I love, Cass, that you're actually recognized by these people at this conference for what you are doing, because you're helping other farms that are seeing results as well. You are making a change that, in 5 or 10 years, you're going to be the one speaking on the stage, because everybody's going to want to hear what you're doing and how you're doing it.
Yeah, like I said, I just, two things that vindicated was seeing that earthworm this week, and then, like I said, something that the false blossom panic that everyone's having. I'm like, well, there's something beyond just insecticides, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So we'll see what comes of it. But like I said, that's been like my two biggest things so far. So we'll like I said, I'm so happy too. The farm that got me with the silent spring and how quiet it was, and like I'm gonna I was like, I'm gonna still work here, even though I was disgusted by it, but now that I'm seeing that ecosystem change, it makes me happy, makes me happy. So
Well, and the thing is with the methodologies that you are using on your personal farm, if everybody else around you has these problems and you don't, then everybody's going to be going, well, what? Okay, we have to start doing what you're doing so we don't have these problems.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's all about a balance. It's all about balancing it out. So
And Silly Lily figures you'll be a speaker in less than 2 years.
we'll see. We'll see.
Well,
If
Cass,
not, I can come here to my, to my culture. You guys, I mean, I think I think Leighton, Silly Lily, all you guys are, it means a lot because I don't have people I can talk to about this really,
Mhm.
So being able to come on here and talk about it or just listening to your other guests, it's like, yes, there's others out there. There's others out there. So
We are becoming a broader community, and it's all of us working together. It's all of us becoming those lit candles and sharing this information that's going to actually change the projection of our entire species on this planet, because we have planet-wide issues and we need planet-wide solutions, and the solution is biology, biology, but also supplying building blocks for the biology to grow more and more and more, for the plants to grow more and more and more, because it's that cycle of life. Without the one, we can't have the other. Without biology, we have no cells, we have no life. I wouldn't be here, I wouldn't have this gray beard.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
it all fits together, and that's where we've really, since World War II, especially when they brought in the herbicides and pesticides, we've broken it up, and we haven't allowed the cycle to really get going and continue on. But you're doing it. You're bringing that cycle back into your farm, and many others, globally, are following these paths. Now, you mentioned biodynamics and other people. A lot of them, without even understanding it, what they were promoting was the biology. So really, all the different methodologies that are organic and sustainable, it's all about adding that organic material, which is where the biology lives, and the organic material is what the biology consumes to make more biology, more plant cells, and more health. So it's an amazing cycle. And I know a lot of farmers out there that are not, or have not, went down a regenerative thing. All they really need to do after they spray and they wait for the 2 days is spray again, but spray with the biology, because they haven't wiped out all of the biology. But if they took the time to spray the biology afterwards, the damage they have done would come back so much faster, and their plants would be so much healthier, and produce so much more. And then, maybe the next year they wouldn't have the problem in the first place that they had to spray the chemicals on to fix. We can do this, guys.
Yeah.
We are doing this.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's so true. It's so true.
So, do you have any questions, my brother?
Me? I don't think so. I know I blabbed for about an hour, so. But no, like I said, it's hopefully I created the journey that people could follow. Like I said, that's how I went from chemical to regenerative, or whatever you want to label it. Biodynamic farming is just, I had to do evil to see my wrong. So, like I said, like you mentioned, there's hope for others. It's just, we'll get them one of these days.
Well, and we will get through this, and we will survive as a species on this planet, because of people like you coming onto this show and sharing what you have seen and experienced. And I appreciate what you've done on your farm and what you're sharing, brother, from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you.
Well, guys, I think that's going to be it for today's show. Don't worry, Cass will be back on. We'll probably have him back on with Leighton to give us updates on his farm. Tomorrow, we actually have Nate on. Oh my god, he's gonna kill me. Viking gardener or something like that. Gardening like a Viking. It's gonna be an amazing show tomorrow with him. So guys, and sorry about yesterday's show. Our IPM specialist had an emergency. He has rebooked already, so he will be coming back on. But guys, we love you all. Thank you very much for the time that you've given us as the people in chat. Cass, you're an amazing man, and your wife is also amazing just for putting up with you.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I thank her for the her parents are, what do you call them? Pennsylvania Dutch. So that's
Yep.
the biodynamic principle was like born with them, So it was just me having to see it, that really anyways.
Oh, I think we had a question that I missed.
Oh yeah.
Serena, I think this is it. If I squash flower closer after opening, can it still open it to pollinate? Is the same day without issues, and will it work? So if you've squashed the flower bud after it opens, can it still open it to pollinate? So I'm not 100%.
I'm guessing not, but if you squash it, I would imagine that should be it. So I know cranberries, for our new beds, we call it flood the bloom. It's the same idea.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than trying to squeeze all the little flowers, we'll add water to it, and that will knock off the bloom. All just to promote growth versus fruiting.
Okay. So, and guys, like you say, an apple tree, if you want more apples on your tree and you have 1,000 blossoms, knock that down to a couple of hundred, so the focus on a lot less and trying to grow multiples a lot less. So I think my wife's coming down to try to help clear this up.
Serena wanted to know if Cass uses cranberries all over his food and does he drink a lot of cranberry juice?
Oh, Serena wanted to know if you use cranberries in all your foods and if you drink a lot of cranberry juice.
Yeah, of course. So, we fresh fruit. We sell a little up until Thanksgiving, and then I freeze the rest of it, and it's great for teas and everything. I always add some of my tea, but now it's going organic, so I feel a lot more comfortable with it. So,
well, yeah, and that's why I went down the path I did, was because I'm consuming the cannabis plant as my medicine. I don't smoke it very much.
Yeah,
I wanted the best for my body, and that's why I took this journey. And Cass, you've taken an amazing journey, and it's going to just continue on around the world with what you are teaching people.
Awesome. Good to hear.
Sorry, I just had to cough. But guys,
I know it's going around.
Oh, I know. We're going to end it there, and we'll see you tomorrow. And for Leighton, we've got Adam on as well. I had him on the show last week. So more on Bakashi EM1. He's a desert grower, so growing out in the sands and the heat of Nevada. So you're not going to want to miss that one tomorrow. Peace, everybody.
Awesome. Peace.